Welcome to the weekend roundup of the Daily Dispatch. First, we'll tell you about the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a statement by the European Union that stated that there's no better option, and if there's a possibility of its revival. Next, we'll highlight the security situation in the East Asian theater, where China, Japan, and North Korea are all ramping up their land and maritime security. And lastly, we'll talk about the situation of terrorism, where Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan has threatened retaliation if the US attacks. We'll tell you more about what this means. We're here to give you the news and to help you infer the world around you. I'm Tayyaba Nisar Khan, and here is your Daily Dispatch. A squadron of the Chinese Navy ships have reached the Western Pacific Ocean. The squadron included the 2 destroyers and 1 surveillance ship, which sailed through the Osumi Strait in southern Japan and the Miyako Strait in the Okinawa, respectively. Now, this development is being seen in the light of Japan's recent announcement of 3 defense documents, which call for building of new long-range missile systems, consider China as a strategic challenge, and increase its defense budget to 2% of its GDP, which would make Japan's annual budget to more than $80 billion, the world's 3rd largest. It's a paradigm shift from Japan's pacifist posture after the Second World War. Now, Japan and China have contested claims over the sovereignty of the uninhabited islands in the East China Sea. Japan calls them the Senkaku Islands, while China refers them to as Diaoyu Islands. Contested claims emanate from the dispute over the delimitation of Sino-Japanese maritime boundary. Now, Tokyo has accused China, Russia, and North Korea for adopting an aggressive military posture, posing a threat to Japan. In November 2022, Russian and Chinese strategic bombers also flew over the Sea of Japan and the East China Sea in a show of increasingly close defense ties between the 2 countries, while North Korea has carried out a record number of the missile tests this year, capable of reaching Japan. Its latest tests include the 2 medium-range missiles fired at the east coast of Korean Peninsula. Now, China, on the other hand, has accused Japan for deviating from the bilateral commitments of peaceful relations between Beijing and Tokyo, and groundless discrediting of China to justify its military buildup. These developments signal strategic rivalry, military buildup, and political tensions as the Far East increasingly becomes the center of great power competition between the US and China. On to our next headline now. José Borrell, the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the UN-mandated coordinator for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA, has said that there is no better option than the JCPOA to ensure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons. He added this issue of alleged Iranian drone support to Russia, the human rights violations in Iran, and the JCPOA should be dealt with separately as they're not linked. Now, this statement comes days after the Foreign Minister of Iran, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, had said that Iran and the P5+1 states are on the way to the final stage of a good, strong, and durable agreement. These statements stand in marked contrast to the Biden administration's Iran envoy, Rob Malley's stance that Iran is not interested in the JCPOA. Now, the US administration under Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018. Accusing Iran of building advanced ballistic missile systems and sponsoring proxy militant organizations in the Middle East. Although Joe Biden had promised to revive the nuclear agreement during his election campaign and entered into indirect talks with Iran, they have been unable to revive the JCPOA. However, the European parties to the JCPOA have stuck to the deal so far and have reiterated their political commitment to abide by the nuclear agreement, but due to American sanctions, they have been unable to deliver on their economic promises of investment and trading with Iran. Now, while the US has taken a more stringent approach vis-a-vis Iran, the European powers have reiterated and emphasized the significance of salvaging the JCPOA, for they fear more political tensions in the Middle East might lead to potential disruptions of oil trade, creating further problems for an energy-dependent Europe. The JCPOA has also been a source of concern for Israel and the Gulf states. The former has vehemently opposed the nuclear deal with Iran and has also accused of carrying out assassination attacks against Iranian nuclear scientists to undermine Tehran's capability to develop the nuclear weapons. But the latter believes that a nuclear deal will improve Iran's economic position, adding more resources to its alleged campaign of increasing Iran's influence in the Middle East through its proxies. Now, the JCPOA was signed in July 2015. Iran was confirmed to deploy no more than 5,060 of these centrifuges at the Natanz until 2026. Now, the enriched uranium was also cut down by 98% to 300 kilograms, which must remain at that level until 2031. Iran was bound to keep its uranium stockpile to 3.67%. In return, Iran was promised sanctions relief. Iran was complying with these conditions until the Trump administration unilaterally withdrew the US from the JCPOA, raising fears that Iran would resume uranium enrichment. On to our next headline now. Noor Wali Mehsood, the leader of the militant organization Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or the TTP, has warned the US not to carry out targeted attacks against the TTP commanders, saying it would elicit a harsh response from the militant organization and the US would be responsible for its loss. He said this in a recent interview with the CNN. He also rebuffed the claims that the TTP is operating from Afghanistan and has a safe haven there. He added that we are fighting Pakistan's war from the territory of Pakistan, using Pakistan's soil. Although there is unequivocal evidence to suggest to the contrary, where TTP's leadership and nerve centers have existed in Afghanistan since they were forced out from the tribal areas as a result of the military operation Tehrik-e-Azab in 2014. Now, formed in 2007, the TTP became one of the deadliest military organizations in Pakistan, carrying out attacks against the civilians and the Pakistani state. It is an umbrella organization of different militant groups to fight the Pakistani state for being a US ally and part of its global war on terror. By 2015, TTP's capacity and networks had been dismantled considerably due to Pakistan military's operation Tehrik-e-Azab, which was launched in June 2014. For example, in 2014, the TTP carried out more than 200 attacks in Pakistan. They reduced to less than 100 in 2015, further reducing to less than 30 in 2018. However, an increase has been seen in TTP's attacks since the mid-2020 due to the mergers with the splinter groups. Now, to stem the new wave of violence, Pakistan entered into a ceasefire agreement with the TTP in June 2022. The armed group ended the ceasefire last month in November due to what it called the ongoing military operations in different areas against the group, and has since carried out multiple attacks in different parts of Pakistan, especially targeting the security forces in KP and Balochistan. Now, Noor Wali Mehsood's remarks come at a time when the US administration has raised concerns regarding the fears of global terrorist organizations finding a safe haven in Afghanistan and establishing the capability and networks to threaten the US. It has also called out the Afghan Taliban for not fulfilling its commitment to deny the global terrorists from using Afghanistan soil. In July this year, the US carried out a drone attack in Kabul to kill Ayman al-Zawahiri, the former al-Qaeda chief, in December 2022. It designated Qari Amjad as a foreign terrorist, the deputy chief of the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, for waging deadly terrorist attacks in Pakistan. Now, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said the designations are part of our relentless efforts to ensure that terrorists do not use Afghanistan as a platform for international terrorism. The Department of State had designated TTP as a foreign terrorist organization in September 2010. Since the withdrawal of the international forces from Afghanistan in August 2021, and the Russia-Ukraine war being the focus of the international press since February 2022, Afghanistan has received only marginal attention. But the revival of TTP in Pakistan and increasing attacks by ISKP in Afghanistan signal the issues of extremism and terrorism still pose a significant threat, not only to the region, but also to the global peace and stability. Next on the dispatch, we'll talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, since the beginning of the war, many European countries have pledged to end or severely cut back their oil and gas imports. The Russian economy is highly dependent on the lucrative energy sector, and these measures are intended to curtail Moscow's revenues and hinder its war effort. For context, in 2021, Russia exported 4.7 million barrels per day of crude oil to the countries around the world, with 2.4 million barrels per day going to Europe. Now, with the seaborne oil price cap that we told you about in the last week's dispatch, and other measures in effect as well, Russia's oil production is expected to drop by 1.4 million barrels per day for the next year. And in recent news, Germany inaugurated its first liquid natural gas terminal at a small town in the North Sea, Wilhelmshaven, reducing its reliance on the Russian oil and gas and diversifying the energy supply. The jetty will be able to host floating LNG hubs, and the project, built at record speed, is expected to supply 6% of the country's demands. Before the Russia-Ukraine war, Germany's energy imports were serviced largely by Russia. However, since then, the country is importing gas from Norway, the US, the Gulf region, and the Netherlands to reduce its dependence on the Russian oil. And this newly opened 90-kiloton terminal, Hohe Esperanza, has the capacity to provide gas to 50,000 households. But it is important to remember, despite these sanctions and bans, many countries like Slovakia and Hungary in Europe remain reliant on the Russian oil supplies for the majority of their energy needs. Similarly, reducing reliance on gas that comes from pipelines that flow through Russia, many more projects such as this LNG terminal being set up by Germany will be necessary before Europe can move to more significantly wean off of relying on Russia for meeting its energy needs. And now, for another update from the Russia-Ukraine war. Let's start with some background. Ukraine is a major supplier of the key crops for the entire world, including 42% of its sunflower produce, 16% of maize, 10% of barley, and 9% of wheat. The country usually supplies the world with almost 45 million tons of grain every year. But this year, with the ongoing conflict, more than 20 million tons of Ukrainian wheat and corn have remained trapped in Odessa, with Russian blockades lending to soaring grain prices as well. In July this year, we saw the signing of the Black Sea Initiative between Russia and Ukraine, allowing significant volumes of commercial food exports from the three key Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea, Odessa, Chornomorsk, and Yuzhny, to be exported. The agreement has since then helped lower the prices of food commodities, and 145,000 tons of Ukrainian wheat are being transported to Asia on 4 vessels under the Grain Initiative this week. Now, this includes 71,000 tons of wheat for Indonesia, which was one of the 3 largest buyers of wheat from Ukraine before the war. Additionally, 23 vessels are being processed in the ports of Greater Odessa and are being loaded with an additional 734,000 tons of grain. Now, challenges still remain, with Ukraine accusing Russia of throttling the passage for their exports. However, this forward movement is a welcome beacon of hope amidst the ongoing crisis, both for the parties involved and the regions of the world that rely on the Ukrainian grain supplies. Next, in another update on the protests that erupted in Iran 3 months ago after Mahsa Amini's detention by Iran's now disbanded morality police over not following the dress code, and her ultimate death. Tehrik-e Ali Dosti, an Oscar-winning Iranian actress, was arrested by the authorities over charges of spreading falsehood about the nationwide protest after she criticized the government, with authorities citing that she did not provide any evidence for her claims. Ali Dosti had posted on her Instagram after a protester was executed by the state for stabbing a member of the paramilitary forces through the ongoing protest. So far, Iran's authorities have arrested multiple celebrities for putting out the social media posts, including footballers, actors, and influencers that openly supported the anti-government demonstrations now in their 3rd month. State authorities have stated some figures and a number of celebrities, including Ali Dosti, have been questioned or arrested because of some baseless comments about the recent events and the publishing of provocative material in support of the street riots. That's all, folks. We'd be happy to receive your feedback and suggestions. We'll be back tomorrow with more bite-sized news that keeps you up to date with what's going on in the country, in the region, and the globe. I'm Tayyaba Nasar Khan, and this was your Daily Dispatch.